There. All right, I will call the Tuesday, January 28th, 2025 regular council meeting to order and begin with a land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta District 11. We recognize that we stand upon the land that carries the footsteps of many Indigenous peoples, including the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis, and the city honors the First Peoples of this land and is committed to fostering reconciliation through relationship building, knowledge gathering, and education. So the first item that we have is a request for approval of a consent agenda, and that includes 3.1, the minutes of November 14th, 5.3, election campaign provisions that have minor amendments to it, and 5.4, Intercity Forum on Social Policy, appointing Councillor Nguyen to the Intercity Forum on Social Policy. So those are the three items for consent agenda. Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'll make a motion that Council approves the following agenda items 3.1, 5.3, and 5.4 on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Now, if anybody wishes to have any of them severed or spoken to separately, I will just ask. If not, I will close the motion. And with that, I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So item 3.1 is dealt with. We have an opportunity for delegations number 4. If anybody wishes to come and speak to any of the items that are on the agenda, you would have 5 minutes to do so. This would be your opportunity. Okay, not seeing anybody racing up to the speakers area. We will continue on with new business, industrial wastewater extension design budget approval. Grant Schaefer presenting.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Grant Schaefer. I'm Director of Fleet Facilities and Engineering. I'm here today to request an amendment to the 2025 capital budget to add Project 25024. This project will extend wastewater servicing along River Road to service the Dow Path to Zero project. Dow and their industrial partners approached the city in late 2023 to explore the option of connecting to the city's wastewater network with ultimate connection and treatment to air utilities. They've been in discussions with and have an agreement in principle with air utilities for acceptance and treatment of their flows. A preliminary design report was completed in 2024 to explore options, develop a scope, and to determine Class 5 cost estimates for the project. The report looked at options to extend and connect to the light and medium industrial lands, as well as other industry partners. None of these options proved to be financially feasible. The report identified 3 required upgrades. The first is the extension of gravity main along River Road to 119th Street, where Dow would ultimately tie in. The second is upgrading the Northeast Industrial Lift Station by adding a 3rd pump into the station. And 3 is twinning a section of existing sewer main on River Road adjacent to the Lions Campground. Upgrades 1 and 2 would be reimbursed by Dow and their partners, as they are the benefiting parties of the upgrades. The twinning of the existing main will be a shared cost between Dow and the city, as this will benefit not only industrial partners, but future development areas as well. Both the South Fort and light medium industrial levies have identified the requirement for this twinning and will contribute the city's share to the project. The Class 5 estimate for all 3 parts of the project is $5 million. This is considered a major capital project within our operating capital budget policy. As such, only design funding is being requested at this time. Once the design is progressed to produce Class 2 estimates, construction funding and approval will be requested. Design of the project will not commence until final agreements are in place regarding cost reimbursement. In the end, there is no net capital cost to the city, as the city costs are included in existing developer levies, and the operating impacts, including revenues and expenditures, will be presented as part of the construction budget approval. Administration recommends that Council amend the 2025 capital budget by adding Project 25024 Industrial Wastewater Extension with a design budget of $500,000 to be funded by the Capital Projects Reserve and to be reimbursed with $400,000 from Dow Canada, $50,000 from the Medium Industrial Levy Reserve, and $50,000 from the South Fort Levy Reserve. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. I will open it up to questions. Councillor Blizzard.
So this is only for design. When is construction going to take place that you need the rest of that money?
Our expectation is to be back later in the spring for construction, late summer, fall.
So it will take place this year.
That's the intent, yes.
Okay. And does the city benefit? You said it was kind of 50-50. Is that for the actual building, or because it sounds like Dow's paying more of this design part?
Your Worship, Councillor Blizzard, there's three distinct sections to the project. So there's one part that benefits both Dow and some of the developing areas. So that's that third section is the part that's cost split. The majority of the costs are just to Dow.
So when it comes to the building, they'll do more of that?
It'll be the same kind of split, yes.
Oh, okay. So do we benefit 50%?
Not 50% of the whole project, but 50% roughly of that one section.
Okay, so what about the rest of it? How much do we benefit from it? Are we, because you made it sound like we're paying 50%.
Your Worship, Councillor, sorry, that's what I said. That's not what I meant.
Okay.
So it's about overall it'll be about an 80-20 split.
Oh, okay.
80% would be Dow, 20% city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer, for your presentation. I feel like you sort of already answered my first question, but so design budgets is 20% the city, which has been paid by developers levy. So is that the expectation as well for construction, that the city is going to pay 20%?
Your Worship, Councillor Abatoye, it would be roughly 20%, which would be picked up by the levies,
By the
developer
levies,
levies.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. My second question is just on the request for decision under internal, external impacts. You talk about a small increase in electricity costs and some other costs that we might see as a result of the expansion. And then you later go on to say that the costs will be offset by revenue generated from the utility rates charged back to customers for the use of the infrastructure. My question is, the customers in this, the customers you're referring to in this scenario, is that all customers, or is it just specifically the industrial customers?
Your Worship, Councillor Abatoye, it would be built into the charge that's to Dow and their industrial partners.
Okay,
on the
so
site,
it's the
yes.
industrial
Yes.
partners. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll just see if there's any other questions. Okay, I think I'm seeing head shaking no on there. So with that then, go ahead. Just a second. I've got Councillor Harris now, and then I'll come back to you. Councillor Harris?
No, it's fine. I was prepared to put the motion on the table.
Okay, well, you can put the motion on, and then she can ask her question. Push your button. No, him. You can ask it during discussion and debate.
Okay, on that basis, I would move that council amend the 2025 capital budget by adding project 25024 industrial water extension with a design budget of $500,000 to be funded by the Capital Projects Reserve and to be reimbursed with $400,000 from Dow Canada and $50,000 from the Medium Industrial Levy Reserve and $50,000 from the South Fort Levy Reserve.
Okay, thank you. I'll accept that motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I support it. I think there's been a fair amount of discussion that's gone on both internally and also with Arrow Utilities about this being a reasonable extension of our ability to treat wastewater in our area. So I think it's a reasonable project. I'm glad to see it come forward.
Okay, thank you. So we will go to discussion and debate. Councillor Abatoye, you were first up.
So
Sorry.
I just had a question. So my question is about capacity, because Dow Chemical, do we know how much they're going to be putting in? And the expansion, are we confident that it's going to take care of all the needs, or is there going to be like a need for an expansion later? Like, has that been discussed at all?
Your Worship, the Councilor Batoye, so Dow has provided their projected flows and their peak flows, and that is what the extension and expansion is designed to, is to deal with their peaks.
Okay, so is it just the expansion is just for their needs, or is it an expansion for future needs of the city?
Your Worship, the Councilor Batoye, there's very little we can tie in above and beyond unless somebody else comes forward with a need in the future that we don't know about from a process standpoint, in which case we'd have to deal with it at the time. To project those flows we wouldn't be able to do right now.
Okay, so basically the capacity is just for their current need. That's what we're expanding to.
Your Worship, the Councilor Batoye, more or less, there's probably a little bit extra just from pipe sizing, but nothing.
All right, thank you very much. I definitely support the motion.
Okay, thank you. I'll see if there's discussion and debate from anyone else. Okay, not seeing anything. Councillor Harris on close. You're good. Then I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Grant. All right. The next one we have is business development incentives. Aaron Brush Duncan.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Erin Brush Duncan, Director of Economic Development. I'm here today to present information on the Business Development Incentives Program, as well as some recommended amendments to the Business Development Incentives Policy, FIN-014-C, as outlined in the January 28, 2025 Council Report. The City has offered business development incentives since about 2010, beginning with programs like the Storefront Improvement Program and Curbside Enhancement Program for downtown beautification. And over the years, the program has expanded citywide with several new streams of incentives. Administration has completed a review of this program and is recommending several amendments to the Business Development Incentives Policy to better meet the city's economic development goals and enhance the program's overall efficiency and effectiveness. Updates have also been prepared for the Business Development Incentives Administrative Procedures, FIN-014-A, which will be considered by the City Manager following adoption of this policy. The Business Development Incentives Program has seen growing demand, with funding in 2024 with funding requests in 2024 exceeding available resources. Although 18 applications were approved for the full $75,000 budget, there were actually 42 applications received in total, with 7 projects not being able to be approved due to insufficient funds, and an additional 4 projects that were withdrawn and planned to apply again. Given the sustained and increased interest in this program, administration recommends refocusing incentives on projects that deliver long-term, tangible results and have a greater impact on the community. The recommended updates are designed to enhance program effectiveness and better align with the city's strategic goals and the goals of the program. Some of the policy changes include clarified definitions, minimum project expenditures being increased to $2,000 to ensure an efficient and effective use of city resources, and adding clarifying language around the ineligibility of in-kind labor. Additionally, some more significant changes to the types of incentives offered is also being recommended to ensure that these incentives help to create tangible, long-term results and have a greater impact on the business community. Some of these changes include removal of the small business education incentive, removal of the marketing incentive, and a proposed new incentive, the commercial revitalization incentive, which is focused on reducing commercial vacancy, revitalizing underutilized properties, and improving the viability of older commercial buildings. Please note here some of the key incentive changes. With the storefront improvement incentive, we're not suggesting any significant changes. The equipment and technology incentive has proposed administrative procedure updates to include clarifying eligible and ineligible expenses. There are no significant changes to the export development incentive being proposed. There is a proposed removal of the education incentive to ensure the efficient use of city resources. proposed removal of the marketing incentive due to challenges in measuring tangible results, and new commercial revitalization incentive. The proposed commercial revitalization incentive supports the city's strategic goals of reducing commercial vacancy and driving private investment by addressing the challenges of upgrading older buildings. Many properties built before 2000 require significant renovations to meet modern standards for functionality, accessibility, and energy efficiency, upgrades that can be critical but costly. This program offsets renovation costs and encourages investment, making older commercial spaces more viable. By enhancing the aesthetics, accessibility, energy efficiency, and functionality, the incentive revitalizes these underutilized spaces and supports tenant retention, vacancy reduction, and the revitalization of these older commercial areas. Eligible costs focus on significant improvements in publicly accessible spaces to ensure lasting impact. Projects must enhance the building's aesthetics and functionality, benefiting both the businesses and the surrounding community. Targeted at areas with a high concentration of aging buildings such as downtown, Pineview, and a small pocket of the Veterans Way corridor, the program ensures resources are directed where they're most needed. By fostering more vibrant, accessible, and attractive commercial properties and businesses, this initiative not only benefits businesses and the property owners, but the community as a whole. In addition to the proposed policy changes, administration has begun preparing updates to the administrative procedure to improve processes and emphasize clearer guidelines for eligible expenses to ensure these projects deliver meaningful impact. Key changes include the refinement of eligible expenses, especially in regard to the equipment and technology incentive. Eligible expenses will be focused on initiatives that directly enhance business competitiveness and growth, such as automation equipment and technology that supports new services, products, or business growth. Items such as replacement equipment, computer and technology accessories, office equipment, and subscriptions would now be expressly ineligible. Additionally, the Business Development Incentive Administrative Procedure will define eligible items for the proposed commercial revitalization incentive, with a focus on major improvements that are long-term in nature, such as the engineering or architectural fees, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical system updates, interior construction costs, barrier-free modifications, and safety and energy efficiency upgrades. Renovations to non-commercial spaces, interior furnishings and chattels, major maintenance items, and improvements required to correct code issues are ineligible. Another change to note would be that the application period is being shortened from ending on November 1st to October 15th to help ensure that projects and funding agreements are completed within the calendar year. These amendments would have no additional financial burden on the city. There would be no additional impacts for internal departments. The proposed increase in minimum expenditure for the incentives program ensures that staffing time required to support and process applications results in material investments. And the proposed commercial revitalization incentive, as well as the existing storefront improvement incentive, recognize accessibility improvements as eligible expenses. These incentives support enhancing buildings and businesses to meet accessibility standards, helping to create a more accessible and inclusive community. Based on the thorough review of the program, administration recommends that council approve the amended Business Development Incentive Policy, FIN-014-C, as set out in Appendix A. This will allow the city to move forward with a more impactful and efficient incentive program. The administrative procedures for the Business Development Incentive Program will be updated accordingly. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go to questions first before we take a motion. So we'll open it up for questions. Councillor Blizzard.
Sure. I can see why we have some incentives, but are there any businesses here in Fort Saskatchewan that wouldn't be here if they didn't have any of these incentives? Like, is this the thing that puts them over the crunch? Because I can see giving someone a hand, if they're struggling, and a one-time thing, but does this really help them that much?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, It's difficult to say if one of these incentives is kind of that make it or break it. However, from engaging with the businesses that have successfully received these incentives, there's been a lot of gratitude, a lot of excitement. And when we talk with new businesses or businesses that are looking to add something new, there's a lot of appreciation for the support from the city. So overall, it's been very positively received.
Okay, and these seem to be more for current businesses to improve their store, to, a landlord owning a building already. It's not bringing in new business, or does it also help bring in some new ones?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard. So these are business support incentives. So for businesses that are located here within the city of Fort Saskatchewan, these incentives are directed to support them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the presentation, Aaron. I have a general question, and it's more of a philosophical question. Where do you stand on interpretation of the policy as it goes incentivizing versus subsidizing business growth in Fort Saskatchewan? If you know what I mean by that, I think that's really clear.
Okay. Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, I would say that these incentives, because they are a reimbursement incentive, so if somebody is looking to specifically grow their business or become more competitive with a new piece of equipment or improving their storefront or attending an export event, we are supporting them and taking on that new endeavor. They are not receiving any funds for ongoing business expenses. So in my mind, if I'm understanding your question, because this is for something that is new, we're not reimbursing you for something that's, previously been done or something like that. It is an incentive to, improve and grow as opposed to subsidizing current worker needs. If that answers your question?
Yeah, I think it does. I just, having looked at the grants that have been given out, and it seems like subsidies more than it is like growth opportunities for these businesses. I was just curious your thoughts on distributing money to, like, we're on the back of COVID and all the struggles that small businesses have had here in Fort Saskatchewan. So I was just curious your thoughts on kind of where the line is drawn.
So through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, these incentives, especially with some of the revisions that are being proposed for the eligible costs, for instance, for the equipment and technology, the guidelines have been narrowed and refocused. So it specifically says, I just want to make sure I get the wording correct. Let's see. Yeah, it's the new eligibility. It's specifically for equipment and technology that helps to grow or increase the competitiveness of a business. So it's not for something that is like equipment replacement, which to me feels more like a subsidy, or for buying office equipment or things like that. This is for a new piece of equipment that would support something new, a growth or a competitive advantage for the business.
I appreciate the answer, Aaron, and you're comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon, you're next.
Thank you for your presentation. I do have a question about the commercial revitalization incentive. Mm-hmm. It looks like that you've suggested here for $10,000 per unit, max of $30,000 per building. And I just wanted to clarify what that meant. So in the example in my head, if you have a building that has 4 separate businesses in it, are you saying that if 3 of them apply and get 10,000, then that 4th one is going to be out of luck? Or are you actually looking at each individual condo type commercial unit as a building?
Through your worship to Councillor Macon, just want to make sure I'm understanding, so please correct me if I'm incorrect. So I would need to, I think, look into I guess a a condo divide of a building. But for example, if a building was owned by, a building owner and they had multiple tenants, then just three of those tenant spaces, I guess, would be able to be funded for up to that $10,000. So each unit, each tenant or each unit would be eligible for up to $10,000, but the building as a whole would only be eligible for up to $30,000. So if there were more units, it would still cap out on the building. I think I would have to go back and consider if there was a building with multiple condos, I would have to take a look at that.
Yeah, thank you. Because I do think that it probably unintentionally makes some businesses ineligible just because other people have beat them to the punch in a certain space. So, just something for us to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Batoye.
Thank you for your presentation. So one of your goals as the Economic Development Department is to ensure that you have business expansion and retention. So would you say that the business development incentive is to help you achieve that goal?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. My second question is about the exports grant, and I see it's just 5,000. That's to me sounds really, really small. So are you seeing people request for that grant, and what has the uptake been?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, yes. We have had successful applicants who have attended major export development shows, and so some of the expenses that are currently eligible, I could look through here for exactly what they are, but it would be for the attendance in that event, it would be for preparing some of the materials for that event, and some of the associated travel costs to get them to that event. And so these are great opportunities for businesses to learn more about how to export, but also to showcase their products in hopes of getting some of those larger export contracts so that they can do business outside of Canada.
So I agree with everything you said. I'm saying the reason I'm asking these questions because I operate in the exports sector, and I know that for trade shows, you're talking 15 to 20,000 for your total cost, right? So I guess it's just to help subsidize sorry, I just used that word. It's to help incentivize them to be able to go for those trade shows. But I'm just curious about how many people have applied for it, and that 5,000 is the max they would get, right?
Sure. Through your worship, Councillor Abatoye, you are correct. So $5,000 is the maximum, so that's the maximum amount they could get. So there are some very specific requirements for the export development incentive. I think it's on page 16 of the current. I'd have to look at the new. There were some requirements in there about what type of event they could attend, and so you're correct. $5,000 would cover a good portion of their project, but there is a maximum of the 5,000, so they wouldn't be able to go over. The two approved applications that we've had, I believe, have not even quite hit that $5,000.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So they have to spend the funds first before they get reimbursed. Is that the way it works?
Through your worship, Councillor Abatoye, yes.
Okay, so there are people that have actually applied but just haven't gotten reimbursed because they haven't submitted their receipts and all of those things yet.
So we have had 2 successful applicants for the export incentive. So
Okay.
yes, they would apply to us, and if they're approved, and then they spend their money, they would be reimbursed.
Okay, sounds good. So actually, don't worry. I can follow up after.
Okay, thank you. I'm next in the speaking order. So when we're talking about this, when I listen to this and I read the incentive procedure and policy, it really talks about community wealth and economic well-being of the community. When we're talking here today, it sounds like it's, I'm going to say primarily focused for a business that is in retail or commercial. Correct?
Your worship, do you mind? Yes, I think that many of the applicants that we've received have been either in commercial or professional services or retail along those lines.
Okay, so then the question that follows that is I looked at the ones who came out on the list that I had asked for, and it was sent out to council. And for everybody listening in, it's apparently in the tri-quarterly report or something, so it's not as transparent. A good majority of them were home-based. So I guess the question that I have when you look at them and you Google them and somebody's doing a home party or they're doing bookkeeping from their home or they're doing massages from their home, you know, when we talk about we want to grow competitiveness of business, the way it's being administered right now. So the question that I have is the way it's being administered right now, are we not giving a huge advantage to a home-based business versus somebody who is in a commercial or retail space that's actually paying rent or building development themselves?
To your worship, I'm not sure. Do you mind clarifying the advantage that you think, the advantage that you're seeing for home-based businesses?
Well, the number one advantage would be a home-based business doesn't pay increased taxes. They don't pay commercial taxes. So they just pay, for example, at my house, if I pay, $3,000 taxes and I put in a home-based business and generate a bunch of revenue, but one of these counselors starts a business where they've got concrete foundation expenses and they're paying 60% of our mill rate. That's the advantage, disadvantage that I'm talking about.
Thank you for clarifying. So under the new proposed incentives, the home businesses would only be eligible for the export incentive and the equipment and technology incentive because they don't have the storefront or, the commercial space. They wouldn't be eligible for those. And so with the proposed revisions to the eligible costs for equipment and technology, those new guidelines are really focused only on equipment and technology that helps to improve their competitiveness and growth. And so, our home businesses, they do pay the same annual business license fees as businesses with commercial storefronts. And entrepreneurs often start their businesses at home, and many aspire to grow into those commercial spaces. Fort Saskatchewan has seen multiple home businesses that have started off at home and then have grown into a commercial space. So I would say that our recommendation is still for home businesses to be included, especially with the narrowed and more focused guidelines on those expenses to make sure that it's actively going towards growing those businesses and improving their competitiveness and contribution to our local economy.
Okay, and I'll make my comments once we get to a motion. I did have another one, but I'll have to come back to myself. I should have written it down. Councillor Kelly, you're next.
Thank you. Aaron, describe for me, please, the difference between an incentive and a subsidy.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I would probably like to go over that definition a little bit more, but for me, when I'm thinking of incentive, I'm thinking of something that helps to encourage a business to grow and to try something new and to push into like a new investment or a new service, some sort of growth or new initiative. And I think of subsidy as more of a longer or more of a reoccurring support or a support for your existing business types. But I would probably need to look up those definitions to give you, I guess, a more formal definition.
And thank you for the response. I think, though, that the incentive, as you describe it, and in fact, incentives from a government perspective, fall under the classification of a type of subsidy. you also, in the policy, suggest that the reason for this or the anticipated gain is something meaningful to the community and to the city of Fort Saskatchewan. Do you think that in today's world, a $10,000, I'm going to use the word subsidy, for a $250,000 renovation on a 2,000 square foot building to bring it up to code is meaningful?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I think that support that the city can show to a business looking to make improvements is impactful and meaningful. I would say that over the last number of years, the total city contributions have had a pretty significant impact on how large the project costs have kind of resulted from these incentives. So I think that it does have impact. And I think on smaller businesses where every dollar counts, I think having the city show support for those for that growth, it does build good community impact. If our local economy, our local businesses are growing and thriving, then yes, it does have impact on our community.
And Mayor Katcher, one more final question, if I may. We have a budget, I think, Aaron, of $75,000 for this program in total.
That is correct.
If two adjacent businesses filed an application 2 weeks after the first, and the entire budget is used up, and the first applicant gets their $10,000 and the second doesn't, do you imagine that $10,000 could confer an unfair or special or unique commercial advantage to the recipient over the company or business that wasn't successful?
Just to confirm, I'm understanding your question correctly. So you're asking if, if two businesses apply very close in time, but by the time the second business applies, there is no additional funding, so they're not eligible. Is there an advantage given to the business that was successful?
Let me make it more generic. You just described how you feel that these funds could be meaningful. So meaningful money put into a business by government of any nature, does that money then constitute in any way, shape, or form, or perhaps constitute or create an unfair business advantage for the recipient over those businesses that have not received the money?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, so these incentives are open to all small businesses within the city of Fort Saskatchewan that meet the eligibility. So in my mind, I would think that all of the businesses had an equal opportunity to apply for these incentives. If that answers your question.
And with all due respect, I'm putting you in a difficult situation, and I'll leave it at that. I'll express my comments in the debate section. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go on to round two. I know I was on round two, but I'll continue on with Councillor Kelly's question. So the program is based first come, first serve, correct? It's not based on you will review them quarterly or once a year?
To your worship, that is correct. The way they are currently written, it is they're reviewed on how the order that they come in.
Yeah. So if you're in first and if you're in last, that's the way the policy's written. Okay. I wanted to go back to, you said home-based would be still eligible for export and the technology grant. Okay, so I want to come back to the technology grant. So if they're doing something technical from their home, I assume it has to do with computers. And that comes back to my question about competitiveness once again. If somebody's doing something from their home that's dealing with computers like that, and yet we have brick and mortar businesses in our community, again, why would we be giving them a grant because they're actually competing with a brick and mortar who is actually paying taxes and adding to the wealth?
Okay. To your worship, so with the revisions to the equipment and technology incentives that are being proposed, like a typical computer equipment or accessories would not be eligible. This would be specifically for like specialized equipment. So like a normal desktop or those kind of subscriptions wouldn't be an eligible expense.
But to my question, wouldn't that be the same for a brick and mortar business that's paying taxes and giving out stuff as opposed to a self-employed person? When we talk about competitiveness, that's where I need to get the clarification. Who are we competing with?
To your worship, I would think that all businesses that are operating within the city of Fort Saskatchewan are looking to, earn business and earn money and contribute, and they all contribute to our local economy.
Okay. I'm going to keep going unless somebody else buzzes in. So the question that I have is, what is your follow-up? Do you follow up 6 months? Do you follow up 1 year, specifically with the ones who could maybe fade into non-existence quickly?
To your worship, so we do send out post. We connect with them a year later to see, was the incentive impactful? Are they still having success? Things like that. We don't necessarily require a response. So some people respond, some people don't. But because we're actively involved with a lot of our businesses in the community, we get to hear from them, whether or not, if they're having success or if they're offering something new, that sort of thing. So we do follow up with surveys. It's something that we could increase and report on if that is something that's desired.
Okay, but you don't go out and do a physical connection.
To your worship, I have not gone out and done a physical inspection.
Okay. One more question that I have, and then we'll see where council wants to go with this. When you talk about the grant for redevelopment, so if a business has allowed itself to get into such disrepair, are we not once again subsidizing or incentivizing, what's the incentive for them to keep their business appearance up?
To your worship, I just want to confirm you're speaking about the commercial revitalization incentive? Sure. So the commercial revitalization incentive is being designed to encourage either tenants or property owners that are actively operating a business within their space to make improvements to their space so that it is, more attractive or more functional or is more accessible. So it could be something, and we also require that there be at least a 3-year lease from a tenant. So the goal of this is if someone, for instance, if you wanted to look at a space, you're a tenant, you want to look at a space to lease, you're going to look for a space that's not going to cost a significant fund to kind of make it your own or to make it meet your needs. And sometimes with older buildings, it can cost a little bit more to bring it up to the standards that you'd like. So this incentive is kind of directed to trying to support some of the older buildings and their viability. If we can, help to offset some of the increased construction costs necessary to bring them up to kind of modern standards and modern look, then it could help to bring new tenants into the space or help to keep longer term tenants in the space as well. So they're not looking for a more, modern spot someplace else. And also it helps to improve the overall commercial building stock within the city.
Okay, so they have to have signed a 3-year lease. Mm-hmm. How long do they have to be in operation to begin with?
Through your worship, there is not currently a defined time for being in business first.
Okay, and I only asked that question because a lot of them will start a business and 3 years later they don't exist.
Mm-hmm. To your worship, I think the intent is that if the space is physically improved, such as having more modern mechanical equipment or more energy efficient windows or some of those major improvements are done, then hopefully if another business were to go into that space, that it would be a more desirable space for them to lease because of those physical improvements. The temporary things like the furnishings and things like that would not be eligible.
Okay. I still have one more. I'm still looking for anybody else if they want on discussion and debate. But so then I guess I keep losing my train of thought here. For these businesses, oh, geez, I just lost my train of thought. Okay. Okay, I'll leave it with that because I support the storefront. I probably don't support that, but if I come back to it once we got a motion going, I'll come back. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor Katcher. Listen, I'm prepared to make the motion because I suspect many councillors have a lot to say on this, and it's difficult to get it in by way of questions. So if you'll accept, I'm prepared to make the motion and keep this thing rolling forward.
Sure.
You bet. I move that council approve the amended Business Development Incentive Policy FIN-014-C as set out in Appendix A to the January 28, 25 council report.
Okay, I'll accept that motion. You may speak to the motion.
Mayor Katcher, to be honest, it's doubtful I'm going to support my own motion, but I'm going to weigh in with the debate portion and listen carefully to everything that everybody has to say.
Okay, so we're going into discussion and debate. So just for council's information, I'll let discussion and debate go, but at some point in time, I do have a referral motion. So I would welcome discussion and debate, and then I will put my referral motion on and see where we go from there. Councillor Kelly, you might as well go with discussion and debate. You're the first one on.
I will do so. Thank you. I question the need for this program. Seriously question. I don't think that the dollars or the budget are significant enough to provide any meaningful impact to the community. I pretty much support your comments around, or what I suspect are your concerns around the home-based business end of things. I do support council, and we've already made inroads in this area, but I do support council supporting businesses that develop and or move to the older part of Fort Saskatchewan and set up base there. We've identified as a council the need to support this particular area within the city of Fort Saskatchewan. I don't think that $5,000 for export marketing to go to a convention someplace is meaningful to the community, and I do believe that that is a subsidy. The difference between a subsidy and incentive in my mind is the subsidy is generic and it really reimburses for stuff that the business ought to be doing anyway because that is their business. The incentive would be an example of money that the city of Fort Saskatchewan would be prepared to contribute to help a business locate downtown, thereby meeting the objectives of the city and the business. So the incentive is a carrot to get the business to do what council wishes them to do. In other words, locate downtown, for example. I'll stop there, Mayor Katcher. I think this thing needs a serious review and rewrite, and I look forward to your notice of motion, see what comes of it.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Harris.
Question for the city manager. So if we did not approve this particular motion, that just means we're not approving changes to the existing policy. So then we'd need a subsequent motion to kill this program if we chose to kill the program. In other words, in relation to what Councillor Kelly just said, is there real value in this? And if we do away with it, are we really doing a bad thing to our business community or a good thing? So would we then subsequently need to kill the policy in a subsequent motion?
So through your worship, yes, if this motion fails, you still have a policy in place and you still have a program and a policy in place. And it would just continue on under the existing rules. So if this motion gets defeated and the council still has a desire to eliminate or review the program further, then yes, a subsequent motion would be required.
Okay, and I understand the mayor has a referral motion which would ultimately give direction, and you want to talk about that. Okay, well, I'll back off then.
Okay, so I do have a referral motion. I'll read it in and you can put it up because it's fairly long. So the referral motion is that council refer the Business Development Incentives Policy FIN-014C back to administration to revise definitions and strengthen eligible criteria, guiding principles, and ensure the following changes are applied across all applicable sections of the policy. Just before I go on with this, I do turn the chair over to our deputy mayor is not here, so it goes to the next deputy mayor, which would be Councillor Harris. So he'll be the one letting us know any discussion and debate when it gets to that. So sections of the policy. Add definitions for home business and nonprofit organizations to clarify eligibility. Exclude home-based businesses from eligible incentives. Permit nonprofit organizations to be eligible provided they occupy commercial space and do not receive other grants from city and are not indebted to the city. Require that eligible businesses employ more than one unrelated employee, not the owner or family members. Reduce the reimbursement of eligible costs to a maximum 50% regardless whether the costs are procured from a local business. Reduce the maximum incentive amount for the storefront improvement commercial revitalization incentive to $20,000 per multi-unit building. Grant final approval to council, and that one's open for debate. Ensure all changes apply consistently across incentive streams in both policy FIN-014C and procedure FIN-014A, and further that administration bring the revised policy back no later than March 14th. And I will just add on there, if there was additional requests from council, that they would be considered as well. So Councillor Harris, I'll let.
Okay, you've now had a chance to view the referral motion, so I would open the floor to any questions or comments to members of council.
So if I can speak in favor of my motion?
Yes.
Referral? Okay, thank you. So in speaking to this motion, I have a tendency to agree. I really struggle with this program. When it was started a number of years ago, where it was storefront, where we were trying to get downtown revitalized, to me it was really, I thought it really helped, and we saw some good initiatives take place downtown. But I think the program has just become expanded too far, and 5,000 here, 2,000 here, and when we talk about competitiveness, that's why I said before, I really question who we're competing with, because it feels like we're giving, if we're to allow home base to be on this, you either need to do a different tax base for them or not have them allowed, because they're having a huge advantage when it comes to this. And we're trying to get businesses into brick and mortar. And I know as we move forward, each generation is spending less time in shops, and it's so convenient, to do everything online. It really makes it more of an advantage for people in their home businesses. So I just really believe that we either need to change this dramatically or get rid of it. And I would actually support getting rid of it as well, just so that council knows where I'm at with that. The one area that I know may be of contention is the $20,000 per multi-building. And the reason I added that into there is because you can have one owner that has 2 storefront pieces on a corner building, and they would be eligible for up to $20,000. But it's one owner who would get both of that if they made the application because they have 2 businesses in it. So I don't really think that there's some inequities that go along with this. And as keepers of the city's treasury and our taxpayers' dollars, I think this money could be used in better places. So I will leave it with that.
Thank you for that. First on the list, Councillor Macon.
Thank you. I do support this program. I do think it has an impact on our community. Despite the maximum amounts that are outlined in this policy, businesses only get a portion of the cost. So they are investing a significant amount of the cost of whatever program that they are applying for this for. I do like the adjustments that ECDEV has provided for strengthening, and I would really hate for this program to be canceled completely, but I agree with a lot of the comments that this policy does need to be strengthened quite a bit. I do have particular sections of what Mayor Ketcher had suggested that I'd like to talk about, so I just am looking for clarification if I'm just supposed to put one item forward at a time for people. Like, how do we go about, because there's so many here, and there's about 3 of them I would say that I don't agree with. So what's the best way for us to start discussing these?
Well, I think
today?
we'll get through the questions and we'll move to round 2, and you can ask the first question, or you can ask the first question now, and then we'll go. Councillor Kelly and Councillor Abatoya have flashed in, and so after they're finished, you can ask your second question. We'll go through that on a round-robin basis.
And she can, just so that I'm jumping in, she can put an amending motion forward to see where council is with this. Each one of them, but they would have to be individually, procedurally.
Lovely. Okay. Councillor Macon, anything more?
Okay, well, I guess it could be a long time for us to do individual ones. Okay, so I guess I'll just maybe say on the first round, I'll say the ones that I am concerned about, and then we'll just see where discussion goes, and then maybe look at amending motions after. I am concerned about the grant final approving authority going to council. I do think that if we have a proper policy and procedures that I'm very comfortable with administration taking those and making the decision and not bringing it to council, because I think that can get political, especially when we are choosing between businesses. Then, sorry, I'm just going through the list here. The next one would be sorry, I'll just leave it at that and see what the other comments are, and I'll weigh in on another round.
So are you able to respond to that question?
Through your worship to Councillor Macon, is there a question or additional information you would like from me? I can go over kind of our internal process. Or
no, not at all. It wasn't a question for you. It was just on debate. I was saying that I don't think that we should change it to council having the final authority, but I'm going to wait for other comments to weigh in before I decide if I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, next up, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. As I indicated earlier, I'm struggling with the concept of subsidizing business. Those that receive do get an advantage over their peers in the market, and there's no way to disguise that or to argue against that. And we have a limited budget, so we're not able to provide money to every business in the community on an annual basis. So we're offering up an unfair advantage, regardless of how small it is. It's still an unfair advantage. And furthermore, it's most definitely a subsidy as opposed to an incentive. An incentive is the carrot that council would wave to move the business to actually do something that council perceives as a priority. For instance, bricks and mortar, absolutely. For instance, locating in the older part of Fort Saskatchewan to help rejuvenate and provide for the long-term prosperity and health of the older parts of Fort Saskatchewan. Those are council policies, and we can incentivize for that. I truly don't support smaller amounts of money going to business for any purpose other than something that supports council policy, and council policy, presumably, and I'm certain it is policy that is designed for the benefit of the entire community. For instance, and I keep coming back to it, locating the older part of town, and that helps the entire community. It helps preserve the old part of town for the benefit of the entire community. So I'm skeptical in all of this, other than that one small portion of the program. And I'll leave it at that. I'm not comfortable, Mayor Katcher, with issuing a shopping list of changes that are required, particularly given your stated concerns that are similar to mine, that you're wondering about the program in its totality as well. And perhaps really what we should be having is a debate on whether or not we need this program. And maybe that's the way we should spend today. And if not, we can perhaps change this notice of motion and prepare for that debate at a future council meeting sometime soon. Thank you.
So those are your comments about the referral motion. So on that basis, next up is Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you. Before I speak on the amended motion, Erin, I have a question for you. So you said home-based businesses are eligible for export, and what was the second one?
Equipment and technology.
Equipment and technology. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I do not support this amended motion. As a matter of fact, I only agree with 2 items on that list. I agree with number 1, and I agree with number 5. As number 5 says that the cost should be limited to maximum of 50%. I agree with those 2, but everything else I do not agree with. And I do not agree with this because, first of all, let's go to number 2, home-based businesses. The source of funding for this grant is business license fees. Am I correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, the source of funding, council approves it within the Economic Development Department's budget. Economic Development does have revenue that comes in from business license fees and things like that, but it is funded through like the budget process when council approves it.
Okay, so is it property taxes then that's the source of funding for this?
Through your worship, that is correct.
Okay, that changed my perspective a little bit.
Are you done?
I'm temporarily done. Please come back to me.
Okay, we will. You can buzz in again. Councillor Blazar.
We have a lot of things in front of us. I mean, I guess it would take quite a while, one by one. There are things I like. There's things I don't like. I don't know if it needs to come to council before everything. But overall, I kind of agree with Councillor Kelly on we should look at the entire program and see, is this necessary? Is it doing what we want? I do like the storefront. And as Councillor Kelly said, that benefits everyone that is in the city. Going downtown, going wherever the storefront is. But some of it, I just wonder if, like that person that exports goes to a conference and they get, to me, that's a subsidy, is, you know, they get some of their costs covered because they applied. I'm not sure if I like the entire program. I think it needs to be looked at some more. So on this motion, I don't even know, because there's bits and pieces I don't like. My comment so far. gotta get back. Put cord in.
Oh, you took yourself off. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so basically, are you speaking in favor of the referral, or?
I'm gonna listen more.
Okay, well, next up is Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the intent of this proposal. I had a question for administration with the eligibility of business employing more than one unrelated employee. I think it's a fourth bullet point. I think this is a CRA issue. And if anyone has expertise to comment on this, I'd be inclined to listen to the answer, but I'm not sure we have the jurisdiction to even govern this point in the referral motion.
I don't know if anybody in the room is able to comment on that, or whether we would have to take that in consideration if this referral passes back to administration as a matter of clarification.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's going. So I'd be happy to.
Yes, Your Worship. We don't seem to have anybody that can comment on this.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I figured. Okay, thank you.
Anything more, Councillor Nguyen?
No, that's it for now.
Okay. Councillor Kelly, you're up next.
Thank you. I think Councillor Nguyen, with regards to this particular program, or in fact any other program that we set up, we as a council have the ability to set the parameters, and not totally and completely independent from the parameters that CRA or any other government agency might impose for different programs or different purposes. Mayor Katcher, would you be prepared to change your motion and just ask simply for this particular program to be brought back to a committee of the whole meeting so that we can address in an open forum whether or not we in fact want the program, or whether or not it's in fact meaningful, or what changes could be perhaps included to make it meaningful and warranted or felt warranted by the majority of council. Because I think this particular approach here, and I respect your motives behind it, but I think we're getting sidetracked here, and I do think that this subject matter would be better handled at a committee of the whole meeting. Would you be prepared to make that motion instead?
May I speak?
Then I would ask the mayor. Yes.
Okay,
what are your
thank
thoughts
you.
on that?
Councillor Harris is doing a good job. Yes, and that was my intent in the first place, is to have this to a committee of the whole meeting, because I felt there was a lot of concerns, but I also felt I wasn't able to get it to a committee of the whole meeting, and I felt this was a good way to have a conversation. I absolutely wanted it a committee of the whole meeting, and my thought by putting these parameters down is that it would give a great basis if we couldn't get it somewhere else. So absolutely. So if council, I don't have a problem making a friendly amendment to direct them to bring it back to a committee of the whole meeting, and just having these as some parameters, not that these are what we're going to discuss or not, but just bring it back to a committee of the whole meeting.
So clarification on that point then is, sorry, Councillor Kelly. So just so I'm clear, so you're talking about, in relation to what Councillor Kelly just asked, you'd be prepared not to move this referral motion in that, other than to refer it back to administration to review concerns that council has expressed and have an open and frank and fruitful discussion at a future committee of the whole meeting.
Yeah, so the motion would be simple, that just we direct administration to bring this to the next committee of the whole meeting for council to have a discussion and debate, or to have a discussion and comments and provide direction.
Councillor Kelly, would that satisfy your observation?
Councillor Harris, you just addressed exactly what I wanted to talk about, so perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
So just before I do that, I want to make, I'm getting the sense that everybody's okay with that. I'm just going to look for head nods.
Well,
Okay.
I haven't weighed in yet, so I will. I have concerns with this program, and I'd be prepared to, quite frankly, kill the program. But I think that if we have an open and frank discussion about this, and then we can look at the pros and cons of keeping it and/or any relevant changes that might be required, some of which might have been brought up today. So those are my thoughts weighing in on it. So then I guess next up, Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you very much. So I absolutely do not support death on the business incentive program. I support portions of it. And as a matter of fact, the amending motion, I think I can increase the number of the items I support there based on the new information I just got. I think that it's necessary for us to have some sort of way that we support our local businesses, especially because one of your goals is business expansion and retention, and that helps you achieve that goal. And most of all, the new one, I think the new one is actually brilliant because it will help revitalize the downtown and bring the vibrancy we're looking for. And we've been talking about for years on bringing vibrancy to the downtown area. But I do agree that there are challenges, with the program, like, for example, risk of misuse. It's possible that businesses that would take the grants and misuse it. Equity concerns, there's obviously going to be undue advantage for other businesses over others. But that's life. And also, it seems that it's a temporary relief, temporary relief for the businesses. And there are ways that we can look at how to deal with the actual systemic issues that businesses are dealing with in our community. So I definitely support bringing this to the committee of the whole. But coming back to home businesses, I feel like the world has evolved so much, in our times, that's like the mayor said, everyone's working from home. Remote jobs is a thing right now, so I think eliminating home businesses will be, I would say, disadvantageous to that sector of our community. But I definitely look forward to having this conversation at the committee of the whole meeting if the amending motion comes forward.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up, so I guess what we're dealing with is an amendment to this particular motion that's on the floor right now.
Withdrawal and then putting on a new referral.
Okay, so you're withdrawing this. Would you like to then?
Yeah. So my motion would be, if she can get it up, that council.
Your Worship, do you mind if I just ask a quick question? So if your motion withdraws with unanimous consent, I'm assuming I haven't heard any objection. That's how we do it now. If Councillor Kelly would also, maybe just to keep things clean, if that could also get withdrawn with unanimous consent, and then we could, because that one will still technically be on the floor. And it sounds like the conversation that Council's looking to have is higher level than those amendments. So when this comes back to a committee of the whole, I could probably see, do we get rid of the program and just take the money out of the budget? Do we keep the program and keep it with some amendments? Or do we consider entirely different options in terms of small business supports? So with that higher level conversation, having the initial amendment on the floor, just it kind of keeps alive the existing policy. And it sounds like the conversation you want to have is bigger than that.
That's a fair assessment. I would tend to agree with that from that standpoint. So in this case, that's off. And is that what we're looking at right now, is just refer it to a committee of the whole. And ultimately, then the policy as it currently exists would continue on in force and effect until such time as we have a frank discussion, and then bring it back to a subsequent council meeting for subsequent motions or amendments.
Yeah, I think the question we're going to need to ask now is it even worth going through these amendments if the program's not going to continue? So that's why I'm thinking the details of the amendment don't matter as much.
Ask Councillor Kelly if he would.
But that's up to Councillor Kelly and the rest of council. So it's just a suggestion.
Okay, Councillor Kelly, what is your thought process?
I concur with Mr. Fleming. I don't think that it's a fruitful use of administration time to dig into all of the suggested amendments until council has a chance to voice on whether or not this program even continues to exist. So having said that, I will withdraw my motion, and Mr. Chairman, please ensure that we have unanimous consent to do so, and let's move forward from there.
Straw vote on the unanimous approval? I'm sensing we have unanimous support. Okay, so the bottom line is this matter is basically held in abeyance until we have an opportunity to put it on a committee of the whole agenda and have an open and frank discussion. Is that correct?
I think our intent was the council could still refer the matter. So
Yes,
I think this can still, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, if I may. So yes, by unanimous consent, we do withdraw a motion by Mayor Ketcher, and that is going to be the same with Councillor Kelly's motion, but we still have the referral motion that the business development incentive policy be referred to a future committee of the whole meeting for further discussion and debate. That is the only motion on the floor right now, if the other two motions are withdrawn.
Okay, that said, and in the interest of time, I would imagine that we've all had an opportunity to address this. So on that basis, Mayor Ketcher, would you like to close?
Oh, no, I have nothing more on close. I think we'll have a great discussion and conversation at Committee of the Whole if this passes.
Just a question of clarification or administration. When would you anticipate this being put forward for discussion at Committee of the Whole? The next Committee of the Whole, or by the end of the first quarter?
Yeah, so through your worship, as of now, there's nothing on the February Committee of the Whole, and we were actually looking at canceling it. So if we stick with that plan, it's the March Committee of the Whole. If there's a desire on council, we can keep the February Committee of the Whole and have this as the single item. But I would say my intent would be to bring it back in March.
Is it time sensitive in relation to anything within the program or the approvals that we've currently or may give in the future that would preclude us having to deal with it in March as opposed to February?
Yeah, I would say for all practical purposes, the program's more or less suspended, and we would probably appreciate the additional time to prepare for the the March Committee of the Whole meeting. So that works for administration.
That clarification was beneficial for me, and I suspect the rest of council. So with that said, the motion's on the floor. So I would call the question. And that motion carries unanimously 7-0. And with that, I would turn the chair back to the mayor.
Great, thank you very much. We have two quick items. I think they're going to be quick. So thank you very much, Aaron. The notice of motions, we've done the election campaign provisions, intercity policy. So the first notice of motion is by Councillor Abatoye on light post banner feasibility. So I'll have you read that in, and then you may speak to it. Go ahead.
Thank you. I make a motion that Council direct administration to provide a report by the end of first quarter of 2025 on the feasibility and considerations for a project to design, acquire, and install light post banners within the city that honors veterans in the month of November, and that administration, 1, consults with the Legion on their preferences for location and ability to contribute or raise funds, 2, propose a project plan, and 3, consider all project costs, including design, purchase, and installation.
Okay, you may speak to your motion.
Absolutely, yes. So today I bring forward a motion that seeks to honor the courage, sacrifices, and the enduring legacy of our veterans in a way that is both meaningful and visible to our community. And this motion asks that administration provides reports by the end of the first quarter of 2025. And as I've read the notice of motion, I'm not going to bother to read that to the end. But why is this initiative important? Let me highlight just 3 key reasons. I think that honoring our veterans and preserving their legacy is very important, because every November, as we approach Remembrance Day, we pause to reflect on the incredible sacrifices made by our veterans, and they put their lives on the line to safeguard the freedoms and rights we enjoy today. But reflection isn't enough. We need some tangible actions, and I know that the Legion does a lot already. With the Remembrance Day and honoring our veterans, and I acknowledge the gentleman in our midst here. And number 2 is just strengthening our community bonds. I think that this initiative isn't just about Barnas, but it's about encouraging our community by involving the Legion. We ensure the project is guided by the voices of those most commendable to the most connected, to the veterans and their stories. So I think it's going to create opportunity for collaboration and strengthen relationships with the city, the Legion, and our residents. And number 3, it's going to help us enhance the city's cultural and visual landscape. The light post banners are more than just decorations. They are symbols of identity and remembrance. During November, these banners will transform our city streets, create an environment that visibly honors our veterans and encourage reflection. And this initiative also aligns with practices in other municipalities across Canada, so we won't be the first. So, and what I'm just really asking for today is a report, not an immediate commitment. I hope we'll get to the point where we'll commit, some resources towards this initiative. But this report will provide us with comprehensive understanding of what the projects will entail, including the costs, the logistics, community partnerships, and ensure that any future decisions we make are well informed and responsible. And most importantly, by consulting with the Legion, we also open the door to, possibly cost share or fundraising efforts to reduce potential financial burden on the city while fostering community involvement. I guess in conclusion, it's an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, respect, and civic pride in our community. And it's an initiative that aligns with our values as a community and leaves a lasting impact, not just for our veterans, but for all residents who call the city home. Because I know that I personally, and I'm sure most of council will also agree with this, we get emails, from people saying that we need to do more for our veteran community. And I think this is an opportunity for us to do this. As a matter of fact, the reason I brought this forward, I've been thinking about it actually for the last year or so, being on the Edmonton Salutes committee. And we had a meeting at the Strathcona County. One of our Edmonton Salutes meeting was at the Strathcona County. And they talked about the Remembrance Day sidewalk they had been working on, and the Planning and Development Department came to do a presentation, and they kind of talked about how they had a lot of pushback from the community because they hadn't consulted with the Legion, right, and with the Poppy Foundation, so National Poppy Foundation. So I started to think about, how do we collaborate with the Legion on this? And so I went to speak with the Legion, and they are very, very, very interested in this. And as a matter of fact, at that meeting, they had mentioned that they would also be interested to see if they can even be a part of it and contribute financially. So that's why I brought this motion forward. I look forward to council's comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Blizzard.
Well, I'm not against this, but I think when we do talk to the Legion, the first line of this says consult with the Legion on their preferences for location and ability to contribute or raise funds. So, I think sometimes our Legion already struggles to just cover the cost of their building. They are given concessions already by the city, I think, with lower taxes that they need to pay and an agreement to use the other side. So if this does get approved, and like I said, I'm okay with it, I would just want to know all the costs. I would also want to see, make sure that the Legion understands that it looks like it's, they're going to be asked to contribute to this also. And I would like to see the what the city does now and the dollar value of it, because I do know we already honor the veterans, we honor the Legion, we help with a ceremony every year. So what does that all entail? I do appreciate all that all our veterans do for us. And the last thing I want to say is, again, if this goes forward, it's in the wording there. Anything put up other than a sidewalk that stays would have to be for the month of November. If you put up banners along any road and leave them all the time, they get forgotten. People stop looking at them. By doing something once a year, even for a month, then people actually look at that. So I think we need to know, and that would entail costs of installation and uninstallation. So we need to know all of the items.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
Question administration. Obviously, council has put a lot of things on your table of late in relation to reporting back to council. We just had a long discussion. How much does this take in terms of time to prepare this, to bring it back? This is not a simple task, and I'm not opposed to honoring the veterans in an appropriate manner, but I think Councillor Blizzard made some cogent comments, and so I'm not sure whether or not this would move us in the right direction relative to acknowledgement of veterans. So my question is, how much effort is this going to take administration, because we keep adding to the plate?
Yeah, and to your worship, I don't know that I can give you a quantity in terms of hours of work for something like this. I envisioned it coming back in sort of a 3 or 4 page administrative report, like a council report, 3 or 4 pages long. Some of the information we have already with respect specifically to like the signpost or the light post banner, because we've recently done some of that. So you'd be looking at coming up with a project plan, consulting with the Legion, and yeah, I guess proposing a high level. It's not a complicated project, so. But it's just difficult for me to put it into a number of hours. We're going to have to go find somebody who's got some capacity and ask them to do the work.
So suffice to say, anytime we ask of something of administration in this context, it means somebody has to work off the side of their desk to get this done.
Yeah,
unless
I don't have
dedicated resources.
I don't have, sorry, through your worship, I don't have anybody specifically that specializes in this kind of thing. So it'll probably be a collaboration between 1 or 2 people that I can find that have the time, that can spare the time, I guess.
Okay, well, we'll see where the motion goes.
Okay, thank you. I'm next. So I don't think this is going to take a lot of time, personally. You know, it's having a few banners created and then having, well, I guess it's probably going to have to fall within some policy somewhere. I absolutely support our Legion, Branch 27, and the Ladies Auxiliary for everything they do. This is a nice to have, but the nicer to have is when people actually show up at their events, coming to the Legion, going in for a drink, whether it's non-alcoholic or alcoholic, going to their darts tournament, their cards tournament, you know, just showing up and being with the members, and also their meat draws on Fridays and Saturdays. So there's so much that goes on in the Legion that I think, you know, we all say we want to support, but if we don't get out there and actually go into the building and show them our support, you know, this is a really nice to have. It says, yep, they're up there and we support the Legion. But I'm just saying, I'll support your motion, but I'm just encouraging everybody in the community, go to Remembrance Day, go to their functions. And if they're looking for something to do, go see if they can volunteer, get involved. I think that speaks more volumes. And I see a head nodding back there, so I'm giving you a plug for that. So they definitely need new members. So go, join up, become a member. But I think as far as creating a few banners, I'm sure they have some examples that are already utilized at their Legion headquarters. So, you know, other than maybe we have to include something in a policy, I don't think it would take too much time. But get out, get involved. Councillor Kelly, you're next.
Yes, thank you. I just want to touch on the question about resources of administration, and a question for Mr. Fleming. I've always operated on the basis that administration would advise council if they thought that council was asking too much of them. Mr. Fleming, would you consider that statement to be fair?
Yeah, through your worship, I'd say for smaller matters, there's usually a way we can find to get stuff done. For larger matters, definitely if we think what council's asking for is impossible or going to do harm by our operations or our workplace, then we would definitely advise council of that.
Or advise council that a budget is necessary to handle the motion.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty typical for us to come back and tell council that dollars are required, even just to do, we've done it before where we've told council resources are needed. In this case, you know, going out and securing outside help would probably be more work than actually just doing the work. So I think, but I mean, this council is pretty good about notice of motions. Every notice of motion has an impact on something somewhere. That is a fact. Somebody is going to have to stop doing whatever it is they're doing. I mean, if you assume that there's idle time, then it's easy. Notice of motions can be easy. You just got to go find the idle time. But that's not really the world we live in. Everyone's doing something, and something is going to get set aside so this work can get done. But until I go in and figure out who's going to get voluntold to do it, it's hard for me to really quantify an impact. I appreciate you asking
And I
the question.
appreciate.
I might have took some liberties with the question there.
Well, you did, but you led me to another question, so I'll kick it out for you to ponder on. But taken to the extreme, then it would just be better for administration if council didn't bring forth any initiative. And I don't think that's the purpose for having a council to simply say yay or nay to administration initiatives. Any comment on that statement?
No, through your worship, administration is here to serve council. So that's why I sit here and say for these smaller things, we just figure out how to get council what they need. So, yes.
And that's what I've always thought, Mr. Fleming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to you, Councillor Abatoye, for close. Oops, just a second. Go ahead.
Thank you. So appreciate the comments that have been made so far. And I agree with you, Councillor Blizzard, about getting all the information, all the costs and everything is being currently contributed towards veterans right now. I think that's something that can be included. So this request is asking for the banners to be posted only in November, not throughout the year, because I know you had mentioned that that's what the motion is saying. And I appreciate your responses. I was just going to say Councillor Troy. Mr. Fleming, thank you for your response. And yes, I do agree. It's opportunity cost, right? So something's got to give, and that's why I've been extremely considerate of administration's time on my term, right? I don't just come forward with any kind of notice of motion. So this is very important to me, and that's why I brought it forward. And to Mayor Katch's comments about supporting the Legion, absolutely I agree. I think we should continue to go out there to support the Legion. They do need our support. Other than that, I have nothing else. I think let's vote.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. All right, I will ask if there's any new notice of motions, and I understand Councillor Nguyen, you have one. You can read it in.
Yes, I have a notice of motion here, and I'm just bringing it up. So at the February 11th, 2025 regular council meeting, I will move that council direct administration to provide a report on establishing an annual New Year's Eve fireworks and/or drone show, which I don't think is captured in the way it's written here right now. Drone show program, including all costs and operational implications for the city, and that the report be completed by the end of March 2025.
Okay, thank you. So that is read in. Are there any other notice of motions? I don't believe there's any. So are there any points of interest? Not seeing any. Any councillor inquiries to administration? Not seeing any. I will take a motion to go in camera. Councillor Harris.
I move that we move in camera.
Thank you. As per the items that are listed, please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. And in between now and then, we'll take a 10-minute break. So 3:45, we'll start in camera. Okay, thank you.